This is Brookfield Place here in Perth, Western Australia. We call it the BHP building. You've got a skyscraper exactly like it, I'm sure, right near you. This one has 45 floors of office buildings. Just for round numbers today, let's say it's 100 people per floor. That's 5,000 people total for the building. Let's give them an average salary of $100,000 a year. That would be $274 a day if they were working 365 days a year. Multiplied by 5,000 people, that would be $1.37 million a day to run productivity in that building. Let's say they output 750 words each, a page and a half of emails and reports every single day. That's 3.75 million words a day for the entire building. ChatGPT could do the same thing for a fraction of a cent. Multiplied by 5,000 people, you could run that entire building of productivity for $10 a day. The economics of artificial intelligence just in the last few weeks has become very confronting. Absolutely. Imagine being able to have a skyscraper of PhD level smarts running 24/7, 365 for $10 a day. You could run entire countries on it depending on what you actually asked it to do, and it's very, very capable. I still use this slide in my keynotes this year. You may have seen a different version of it in one of my videos. It's the capabilities of ChatGPT as a standalone model. Here it is. Besides being featured on the cover of Time magazine, the ChatGPT model is able to do some extraordinary things. It's passed a lot of the written examination for the US medical licensing exam. It's also passed a lot of the written subtest components of the bar in some states in the US. It's passed the whole MBA exam at Wharton for the operations management stream. Google gave it an interview and found that it would be a level 3 software developer. It's passed the CPA written components, and it got an IQ of 147, which would put it in the 99.9th percentile of the human population. Of course, it's not human. It's trained with human data and it outperforms humans across the board. But we're talking about something that never sleeps, never answers back, just gives the best of humanity across so many different disciplines and fields. You should be testing this right now. You should be applying it to your daily life, whether it's email or writing reports or helping you with social media. It's amazing what it can do. One of the other confronting and jarring parts is that it's not the only model out there. ChatGPT is one of maybe 60 or 70 plus models in the GPT-3 family, keeping in mind that GPT-3 itself is one of 150,000 models, according to Hugging Face right now in March 2023. Here's just some of the highlights of those models. And it's kind of old. It's been with us for 3 years, since May 2020. There are places around the world that have their own models. Germany has the Luminous model, approaching 300 billion parameters. It's about twice as big as GPT-3. China have got Ernie 3.0 Titan, 260 billion parameters, nearly twice as big as GPT-3 as well, driving a lot of their different interactions between users and government. Here's an example from Jessie Jung just today, who's using ChatGPT to play around with developing skyscrapers in a particular platform. This I found really, really interesting. So you can enter whatever you like here via ChatGPT. He's playing around with his own kind of toy model here based on React and another platform, and it's responding to his queries directly in 3D, building what he's asking it to build. Jessie Jung, ex-Google, well, ex a lot of places, a really smart guy, but you don't have to be incredibly smart because ChatGPT will actually help you code as well. He will have this available at jessiejung.org. You can see this via his latest Twitter post where he's talking about how you can actually build skyscrapers, which I thought was a kind of cool link to our skyscraper metaphor today, where you really can drive an entire team of productivity for fractions of a cent per day. It's an extraordinary time to be alive. You're really sitting in the middle of history. This is the middle of the artificial intelligence revolution, and I think it goes 12 times faster than normal time. They did say the internet was 7x, 7 times as fast as normal time. This one, I think, maybe 12 times faster. So a month is the equivalent of a year, and you can see that if you're reading the memo. Have a play with this yourself. ChatGPT is something you should be using daily to help with emails, to help with strange and very unique questions, maybe gift purchasing or helping you create a document. This is what it's for. Bain Consulting know about this. They've just joined up with OpenAI as partners, and they're going to be using this for Coca-Cola to help Coke generate a lot of their content via some of these models, as well as text-to-image models like DALL-E. I've got consultants like Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey and Accenture in the memo. I've got governments in there that are watching very closely for policy examples and even policy changes. I'd love to have you join as well inside the memo. Paid subscribers from nearly every major company on earth. And it's really for you. Artificial intelligence that matters as it happens in plain English. I'm not going to play a memo trailer today. I think this is just something to sit back and reflect on. If you can recreate an entire skyscraper of 5,000 people for $10 a day, how could you be using this? What does this mean next for the economy? What does this mean for your children? What does this mean for the next 5, 10 years of your life? Maybe don't try and guess that far ahead. I couldn't even guess 2033. I can guess that this year and next year are going to be mind-blowing. Let's leave some meditation music on for now. I'd love to see you in the memo. See you soon. Man, that guy can talk. But that was a relevant video for today because we're going to talk about productivity, and we've actually come even further than the very cheap ChatGPT pricing you saw a year and a half ago. March 2023 is November 2024 here. Welcome to everyone. We've got the Brisbane cam going as usual. Hi to Will and Dax in North Carolina, Col in the UK. Paul is in North Carolina as well. North California, trying to confuse me. That's one of my favorite places in the world, North California. Thanks to Benno for moderating for us. Kyle from Poland. My mate, Dr. Harvey Castro, who has just done his cool TEDx talk. Recommended you go have a look at that. Let's jump in to all about a bit of a case study on using your own knowledge base, your own documents, your own portal to answer questions. You could use it for anything. You could upload your journals. You could upload your text messages, your emails as PDFs, and then ask it to write new journal entries or emails or messages because it's seen your tone. Bit of context here. I was approached at the end of one of my keynotes at Flemington in Melbourne by a company called Kulbadi. This means magpie in Noongar, in West Australian, one of the tribes in the West Australian region. Kulbadi is a very successful office supply company. You can see a little bit about them here in the background. They've been supplying the big guys, BHP, Rio, government organisations for more than a decade. I reckon they're based in Perth. They've got factories here in Brisbane and Melbourne and Sydney and around the place. They said, how would we actually get some improvement on our tender writing? And I thought, well, that's a really cool question because once upon a time, I had to write tender responses as part of my project management hat back in my days at a company called Corporate Governance Risk. And it was really, really tedious. Sometimes the tender documents that you have to respond to can hit thousands of pages. So you're looking at booking a few weeks, maybe a few months to respond to tenders, and they're different every time. Even if they come from the same government or the same company, they're often formatted completely differently, which is, I think tedious is a good word. Exhausting is another word. Hi to Kevin in the UK, Dubstep in Utah, USA, Felsenfuhr from Germany, and Dan joining us from Mississippi. Let's jump in. We've got this challenge of writing tender documents, but we don't want to do it manually. So the best way in November 2024, I mean, the most bleeding edge way would be to use Claude computer use and have it look at your existing tender documents and your other documentation and then fill in the tender responses directly. We can absolutely do that. Today we're going to take that just a step back and use something that people should have been using for the past year or so, which is either OpenAI's GPT functionality or Anthropic's Claude Projects functionality. Couple of caveats. Number one, everything we go through today will probably be superseded very quickly because of how fast this stuff moves. So GPTs, I reckon they'll be superseded at some stage, just like plugins were superseded. So everyone who spent time designing these plugins for OpenAI, they did get transitioned through to GPTs, but I just think that the whole design of GPTs will be moved into something else, maybe something more agentic. What we're doing today is a little bit manual, but that's a good thing. It allows you to be more flexible, and you do need to be flexible with these tender responses. All right. You can follow along with me here. Everything I'm doing is completely open to anyone and everyone. I believe for the GPTs, you do need to be a paid GPT user, a ChatGPT user, so a ChatGPT Plus user. As of a couple of days ago, you can actually reach this by just typing in chat.com. They spent millions and millions of dollars on obtaining that domain. Now they have it. On the sidebar, we've got Explore GPTs, which allows us to click this Create button. GPTs are essentially, they're very much like projects that allow us to have an automated bot almost that's got some pre-programming against it. One of the caveats I forgot to mention, and it's worth mentioning, I spend a lot of time talking about this in keynotes, is that GPT 4.0 and frontier models are pre-trained and then frozen. You can't go and teach them. They've read their 35 million books equivalent. They've trained for their 35,000 years equivalent within 6 months because they used so many GPUs to do it. But we can't go and then say, well, read these documents and have that as part of your connections as well. It doesn't work like that. They made their connections back at the beginning of 2022 for GPT-4, and now they're frozen in time. They cannot be changed. What we're doing today is something called Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG. Don't need to know the acronym. But on top of that black box, that frozen model, we're saying, go and look at my knowledge base as well and help me play around with documents that I've already created so I can create new ones. In this Create GPT thingy thing, so we clicked this Create button, we can actually prompt this thing to create something new for us without us being programmers. So I can say, make me a GPT that reads my internal company documentation. So that might include policies, procedures, existing tender docs, other docs from my knowledge base, and then allow me to ask direct tender questions, and you give the direct tender response. All right, I like that. That's good. You don't have to do it this way. This is almost like the old wizards from back in the 90s, but one good thing is that it will give us a pretty picture. Set up the... it's set up the GPT for us. It's asking what would I not like to name it. Now, because we're doing this for Coolbody, let's call it Coolbody Tender Creator. Whew, that's a good one. It's using Dolly 3 in the background here to create our icon, which is a kind of cool piece of functionality. Claude doesn't do this. We'll use Claude Projects next. Here's our, wow, document assistant. It's even got the text pretty close. Not perfect. All right, all good. I'm going to move over to the Configure tab. The wizard's done most of my work for me. Here's where we do the fancy stuff. So knowledge is a little piece inside of configure where I can upload files, and I'm going to be doing that. Oh, great. Let's grab our standards from Coolbody. We've got 5 of them here. We've got the capability statement. Excellent. That looks like it's about a dozen pages of background. We've got the ESG brochure. Or brochure, depending on where you're from. This looks like it's up to date. Pretty cool. All of these are publicly available documents, by the way. We're not breaching any privacy issues, but we will talk about privacy in a moment. This is the sourcing policy, ethical sourcing policy, 3 pages. A mini catalogue of their office supplies. That's kind of cool. Private equity CSR, don't know what that is. Let's throw all of those into our retrieval augmented generation for our GPT. Cool, it's pretty happy with that. I'll keep web search on, I'll turn Dolly off, I'll turn code interpreter on. The reason I'm turning code interpreter on is that we might ask it to give us a docx or an xlsx file directly, and without this turned on we wouldn't have that capability. We can tie into an internal portal or API, or even a government API if we wanted to add actions. That's a bit more complex. And this is a little bit about privacy here. Under additional settings, which is hidden, use conversation data in your GPT to improve our models. I'm going to uncheck that. One of the other caveats I forgot to mention is you probably wouldn't use this for enterprise level. Please go and use Microsoft Copilot, or make sure you're under the ChatGPT Enterprise, or use ChatGPT for Azure, which is part of the Microsoft Enterprise offering. It includes an SLA, includes a guarantee that your data stays your data. We're using pretty much a, what's the right word for it? Almost like a domestic or a non-commercial use of ChatGPT here. We're just using the direct ChatGPT interface, which is available to the public. Currently getting 3 billion visits per month, more than Amazon.com, and outputting 139 million words per minute in response to user queries. There's a fun fact for you. All right, we're finished. Let's click create. Let's grab... Hey, you can play around with this yourself if you like. Oh no, let's keep this just in case. We'll keep this for only me. We've got a view GPT button here. One of the things we haven't done is give it an existing tender. So I only gave it public-facing policy documents. You would probably give it a best practice tender here as well. Let me see what else I've got available in the background. I talked about tenders that can be thousands of pages. I've certainly trudged through those myself. Here is a blank tender that has been cleaned up thanks to Greg at Coolbody. This is a lot of pages, a lot of tabs, sorry. We've got a cover page here, got instructions, supplier background, quality of operation. So this is where we get our hours adding up, filling in this stuff. Account servicing, account management, contracts, implementation and delivery, commercial core products. This is one of the shorter tender response documents I've seen. I do want to make the point here that we can customize our GPT's response every time. An example of that would be flicking it to Australian English versus American English, US English, or if we're doing a tender response to a major university, we might want more academic language. Let's try it just with our very first question here. Does your company have an established and documented quality process? If so, please describe here. Awesome. I'm going to go, well, this is our response, not too bad. I'm going to go and edit our GPT straight away. So in this drop down, I've got edit GPT. I want this in Australian English because we're mainly in Australia for this company. At the end of each response, I also want you to provide, let's say something like, for more information, see attached document x.pdf. There you go. I haven't been prescriptive with how it needs to word that. Hopefully it changes that up each time, but that's what we've got. We're just updating our GPT here. So the mechanism is you're using GPT 4.0, but after the black box is processing language and providing the statistically most likely best next word for that sentence, it's also trudging through your knowledge base, trudging through your documents. Let's ask this again. We get a very long response here. Whew, not going to fit in my box. Excellent. Some tender documents will say you have to fit into this particular word count. Let's just say do it in 50 words. So we can have complete conversations with this brain in a vat, which is kind of cool. And I reckon we've taken, hang on, let's do 100 words. I reckon we've taken maybe a 40 to 80 hour process down to, and in fact there's a copy button here for us, down to hopefully less than an hour. You should be able to do this in minutes because all your responses are coming from our brain in a vat or boardroom full of Einsteins working for us 24/7. We can step through this line by line. Let's grab this one. This is a kind of interesting one. Please specify all quality accreditations your company holds and the years that they were last renewed. These aren't really detailed in the documents that I gave it, so it's going to have a bit of a challenge finding it here. Question 3, identify any awards or meaningful recognition that your company has received from customers, industry groups, or regulators. Not bad. Some of these are really fluffy questions. Tender creators, particularly governments, yeah, they're human, which is part of the problem. How would you propose that your tender measures your performance as a supplier? Please suggest 5 categories that you would self-measure and report. Please consider what areas you would believe would add tender value. Now, when we cleaned up and sanitized this tender, we changed around some names, so you will see some pretty unusual text happening in the questions, but you'll also see that the responses are best practice. That's a very long one, but best practice. Cool, see, we keep going that line by line, keeping the human in the loop and checking that out. We're not using computer use today, but we could absolutely use computer use to play around with this. Let's skip around to another tab, see what else we've got. Wonder if you could grab this question. Please describe your company's approach to account management for a company of this government's size. And if we don't like that length, either because, well, it just doesn't fit in the box, or we just want to shape it, we can just have a conversation with this model. All right, let's go and change our GPT one more time. Drop down for the GPT, edit GPT. Let's pretend for a moment that this is for an academic institution. This is for an academic institution. Use appropriate language. And if we were completing a tender for Ma and Pa's fish and chip shop down the road, we could also play around with this. I bet you can think of some even better examples than the ones I'm coming up with today. Update that GPT. Let's grab the same question from before. I'll zoom in on this because Excel's default zoom is pretty horrible. Let's ask it again for 100 words. Oh, it hasn't even finished that one. Can't ask until it's finished. Strip this back a little bit. Every time we do this, we'll get a different response anyway, but this should be a completely different response now that we have that little key in there about it being an academic institution. I wonder what would happen if we did make it for our local fish and chip shop. I want to say for now, let's put it in kindergarten language. Oh, I like that. Let's try that one. Joseph suggests that maybe this could be Pauline's fish and chips. Very Australian reference, although she's probably international. Let's see, view GPT here, and then once again, we'll grab our same question. Doesn't seem like it worked. Let's go back to our edit GPT once more. Either a caching issue or it doesn't pay as much attention as it should. To my prompt. Updating this once more, view GPT. Let's come back into this same question. Huh, that's boring. It's chosen to ignore me. It starts with, kind of explain it like I'm 5, and then it really drops that. This might be prompting issue, I'm not sure. All right, let's try one more thing. I actually haven't tried this yet, but when we get to a really boring tab like this, supplier background, which takes a long time to fill out. Let's move this into a new sheet. Wonderful. Oh, I don't know if you've seen Chegg's financials. Jeez, that is really, really interesting. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that, but just while I saw that, this is a company called Chegg and their financials over the last few years. Chegg provided education material online, including some kind of tutoring They were one of the companies in the path of ChatGPT. Look at the lines on net income over the last little bit. Net profit margin, directly thanks to GPT. All right, we're done. That's a that's a little sidetrack. All right, let's attach in here a beautiful GPT, a blank XLS of things that need to be filled out, and let's see if it can actually do it. Fill this out. Give me the new XLS X here. GPT 4.0 in general can do this. Pretty sure that's all I gave it. Under the hood, it's using Code Interpreter or Advanced Code Analytics. Advanced Data Analytics, sorry, as it was called, and then got changed. Let's see if it can actually fill out a form or not. Nah, it doesn't have much fun with that one. We tried. It failed. You may be able to get that to work, but in this case, didn't get that one to work. All right, I'm done with GPT, and let's move over to Claude. Anything else you want to play around with, you can put in here. Edit GPT, can change the instructions. We just saw that it was not great at following instructions. Although it did follow that last one. Cool. Thanks, OpenAI. This is Claude. This is my day-to-day. This Claude 3.5 Sonnet New is very new. This came out in the last few days. There's a functionality called User Project down here, which is kind of fun. We're going to use that now. On the left-hand side, Claude Projects. Create project up the top right. Let's do the exact same thing. Claude Tender Creator. Coolbody Tender Creator. This one we'll put Claude in brackets. What are you trying to achieve? I wonder if we can just steal this prompt here from GPT. All right, we've got the same thing. If I zoom out, this actually appears in the top right. I'm zoomed in a bit though, and I will add the same content that we saw before, which was the public-facing standards, including the capability statement, etc. It's a selection of 5 different files. For both GPT and for Claude Projects, I believe you're limited to about 20 files, 20 PDFs or documents. Claude might be a little bit bigger and might actually count the tokens rather than the number of files. Set custom instructions. Let's steal these from GPT again. That's it. Might have been too quick for you there. We've dragged and dropped 5 PDFs into the project knowledge. We've edited our custom instructions to tell it what to do. There's no prescriptive way of writing these, but we've just used our copy of what GPT gave us. Let's try it out. Let's grab a question from the contracts tab for this particular tender. These questions are so abstract. How do you answer that? Oh, wow. It's definitely listened to my explain it like I'm 5 prompt here. The question was, contractually, if your company was successfully selected, what procedures and processes would it adopt to implement the contract? Let me explain this in a very simple way for your small business. Your fish and chip shop would need to do these easy steps. Be nice and play fair. Follow all the rules, just like in kindergarten. I'm doubting that my tender provider would actually like this. So let's go and edit this project. I'm going to go back to my project. I'm going to edit this one. Let's remove this one, this piece here. Let's remove the whole thing. So we're just using Australian English and we're referencing a document at the end, which is pretty standard in a tender response. Let's grab the same question. Let's use a project, the Tulkuwari tender creator again. I'll zoom in just a little bit here for us. We've got our question here and we're making sure that the project it's pointing to is the project that we just created, which is basically a prompt and a bunch of documents. Cool. And we have the same copy functionality that we did in GPT. It's a very, very long response, but that's their fault for creating a weird tender document. Because if they have to read that, and I hope they use AI to read and rate that, then it's going to be a little bit messy. You'll note here that in Claude's response, we actually referenced 2 of the documents from the knowledge base. For more information, see attached documents, ESG, and ethical sourcing policies. Kind of cool. I reckon we could smash through, like I said, I reckon we could smash through this in minutes rather than weeks or months. And keeping the human in the loop is pretty cool. You might notice something like this that isn't really ready for providing to the government. I cannot provide a specific direct answer. And with computer use, that would be even worse because it's not something that we would notice in the moment. Oh, I didn't even read that question before providing it to it. If there are any tender documents, like in this case, there are general conditions that we want to see, we would just go and add them into a project. So you can drag and drop the tender conditions into this project, or you could create a new project for a tender response. Keep in mind, these tender responses are someone's full-time job, maybe more than one person. And so you can treat it that way. You can create a template project that is ready for a tender response. And then for each tender response, you could have different tender documents, sometimes measuring in the hundreds, that will allow your project or GPT to respond to it. Alternatively, when you're in the middle of a response, you can actually just attach that general conditions. There's a few ways to do this, and there's no best practice as of yet. The chat is liking the human in the loop. We're half an hour through already. I think we've smashed actually exactly what we wanted to do, which was demonstrate completely Claude Projects for tender response and demonstrate completely GPTs for tender response. I am not sure which I would pick now. The GPT seemed to be giving better responses, which is surprising to me. It might be something that needs extra prompting in Claude because Claude is so careful. Is that the right word? Claude seems to be a little bit gentler and nicer, which can be a problem when we're trying to respond to these kinds of things. Yeah, let's try this one. Once again, we got this really fuzzy question that needs some cognitive load, some cognitive work to actually answer it. And I've mentioned a couple of times, I'll mention it again, each tender is different. This is not a standard template. So if you have to fill out a couple of these or a few of these per month, it's not like you can just copy and paste between tenders. It would be nice if that was possible, but even the same government department, definitely different government departments, have completely different template documents or tender documents. This one, we're filling out an XLS file. We might fill out a docx file the next time. We might just have a PDF and then you have to create your own tender response in docx to PDF. It's really, really fatiguing and really, really annoying. So hopefully we're saving someone some heartache here with these examples. This one's kind of cool. Let's throw this into our Contracts tab. They asked a big question, they got a big answer. If you thought this was too long, and it probably is for the box, we would then go and put this in a separate document. But really interesting, the way that these frontier models think rather than copy and paste. If you've been to my keynotes, or if you understand generative AI as a concept, then you'll get what's going on here. There's no photoshopping, copying and pasting. There's no stealing from the internet. It's not going to Wikipedia. It's not gone and grabbed someone else's tender response. It's literally using its weights, parameters, connections, neurons, synapses, whatever you want to call them, that are in that black box, that frozen black box. And every time you ask it a question, it's giving a response based on the statistically most likely next words. Those responses are different every time, which is kind of cool. That's why I think it's easy to compare this to human thought and now human reasoning with O1. Cool, we plow through this for a little bit longer to get through all of our tabs, and there might be some challenges in here. But that gives you a bit of a feel for what's going on when you're playing around with Claude or GPT for using internal projects. Like I said, you don't just have to use this for tender responses. It's just a really good use case. You could also use this for your own personal life. You could use this for... We had a great example was it in the roundtable recently? We had a great example somewhere where someone said they were using frontier models for their own relationship counseling. Instead of going to a marriage counselor, they were sitting down with a frontier model and hashing it out. I think if you used a project and attached in, what do we have? Something like a book like Real Love by Greg Bear, Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I mean, that's already part of the frontier model's training data. But if you attached in some of your philosophy for your relationship, that gives it different context when it's responding. Really interesting, isn't it? I bet you've got even better examples. Would you like to attach your journals? Would you like to attach your last decade of text messages and then have it write new text messages? Would you like to have it play around with your complaints rather than writing letters of complaint when something horrific happens? Why doesn't it just use best practice? And of course, you can use the frontier model directly, the raw model, without adding any documents, but it's kind of fun to see what it can do when it has visibility of your own knowledge base. Let's grab this one. Just throw this one in here. You'll see once again, Claude, and we could stop it doing this, Claude tries to be a bit too careful when it's responding. And so we have to remove that. Oh, actually, in this case, we could keep it. Another good example of using the human in the loop. I love this answer as well. This is the most non-answery abstract answer, which is perfectly appropriate for responding to a government or large enterprise tender document. Because it doesn't even answer the question. It's great. I mentioned previously that I hope these companies and governments are using AI to review tender responses. We'll probably get to 10,000 plus words, I would imagine, responding to all these tabs and putting all of our documents in order. And you're probably looking at 10 to 20 plus different companies responding to your tender. If I'm a full-time government employee and I have to read, what are my maths there, 200,000 words, I'm probably going to be considering a different job. This concept of AI and large language models allows us to go and review documentation. Let me see if I can show you an example of that while I'm thinking of it. I just did a keynote for a big education department, and we talked about using AI to review documents for teachers. It's kind of fun. Do I have it though? Do I have it here to show you? I don't think it's that one. I can see a related video of this one, but I cannot see the one that I want, which is kind of boring. Yeah, I don't think I have that one. There is a mechanism inside a Horton Mifflin product that allows teachers to review hundreds and hundreds of student essays at once with a rubric, and the large language model provides AI-generated scoring, grading, and even review comments. I wouldn't mind being a teacher if I had access to that, because as you would imagine, grading is a huge part of their jobs. And in this case, we're using large language models to grade the work. You could still keep the human in the loop, but it's going through hundreds and hundreds of essays for you and actually marking that. All right, we'll throw to questions in just a moment. I'm pretty happy with that. I would be using this day to day if I'm in a project management / business analyst / technical doc / professional tender responder role, and I would be reducing my cognitive load. I'd still be doing, I suppose you'd still be doing at the moment, 40 hours a week, but where we might spend 40 plus hours responding to this document, we could take that down to minutes and then spend time doing something else. Awesome. Why are we talking about Leta? Oh, it's Alex talking about Leta was what made me fall in love with AI. She was put to eternal sleep, that's right. Leta was based on the GPT-3 model from 2020. She was named after Leta Hollingworth, one of the professors of gifted education. This is the very first conversation I ever had with her on the left here. And just seeing that back in 2020, 2021 was jarring to the point that I transitioned completely from human intelligence research and practice to artificial intelligence research and practice. Leta went to sleep July 2023 when OpenAI pulled the raw GPT-3 model and decided to put instruction tuning over everything. And we know now, and we're still doing it, but we know now that instruction tuning is pretty horrific. One example, when we apply instruction tuning, results on an advanced, what is AP? Let's ask Claude. Yep, advanced placement microeconomics exam falls by 14.7% after we put in human fine-tuning. I think we've talked a lot about that. OpenAI for GPT-3 and 4, for the DaVinci 2 part of GPT-3, and for GPT-4 used subcontractors out of Nigeria. Their business English includes words like delves and what's the other big one? Crucial. Delves and crucial. And you might notice these two words from ChatGPT because of the fine-tuning that happened. And fine-tuning basically looks like let me just clear some text up from here. Fine-tuning looks a little bit like this. The person that is hired to smash through some new data sets to use for fine-tuning will get a screen like this where ChatGPT has been asked that, and ChatGPT has responded that, and the fine tuner will say, well, that's the best answer for me. The problem is, and then the new model will be retrained or fine-tuned with their responses, so this will carry over to other more advanced questions. The problem is, when we get to longer responses, when we get to more detailed responses, humans rating these kinds of answers are still very human, and it's no wonder that we have humans not quite being able to help out with microeconomics. Another big example was with poetry. We'd get 4 different poetry examples, and the human must have always picked the rhyming examples of poetry, because for GPT-3 and other models, we couldn't get non-rhyming poetry. That's not quite right, is it? The fine-tuned version of GPT 3.5, we couldn't get non-rhyming poetry. All right, let's jump into any questions and we will wrap up for the day. Lacey flagging the fact that hallucinations might be happening within either our GPT or our Claude projects. Certainly something to watch for. Didn't look like it was a big example there because we had access to company documents. Even though I only attached 5 documents, we would actually try and attach up to the maximum so that we're getting more context. So I've only put in public documents here, but we could put in a best practice tender response, some of our ISO standards, internal ISO implementation standards. What else will we put in there? We might put in even some long company emails if they're aligned with what we want it to say, some more company background. I'd go and dig up the big standards that are really overused these days, modern slavery, ESG stuff. Oh, we've got some ESG brochures, but some of the standards that we need to have as part of our companies these days, just for regulation. Jeffrey, yeah, we absolutely will be mentioning politics without mentioning politics in the next edition of the memo. I think we're in a really good place with AI moving forward. You'll be able to read more about that. Particularly full subscribers get complete access to the policy part of the memo. I have seemed to have almost broken my chat. We're all right. Live stream regular schedule this time every week until the end of the year. I think that's going to work. We also have a special edition tomorrow. I was invited by Baidu to live stream their Baidu World in parallel with them. They'll have the main live stream with an English interpreter happening in real time, which is really cool. And I will be providing a smaller stream with my commentary here in a little bit more than 48 hours from now. Love to have you join me. It's not going to be a particularly big launch event. They might have a couple of pieces for programmers. They won't have Ernie 5.0 yet, Ernie 4.0 being the main competitor to GPT-4 right now. It's amazing. They may have talk of their new hardware to compete with the Meta AI glasses, or the Meta glasses, and then we'll just come and hang out, bring a drink, bring a coffee, and we'll come and sit together and listen to CEO Robin Lee talk about Baidu's latest offerings live in real time from Beijing. I'll be here in Brisbane. You'll be wherever you are, and we'll pretend like we're time traveling just like this. It should be kind of cool. They put on a really good show and they don't get enough visibility in Western media. They don't get any visibility here in Australia, a little bit in the US. I'm not sure about Europe. And yet well, Lee is a 8x billionaire. He created, what was it called? Rank X in the early or the mid 90s, which was then copied by Larry and Sergey, became PageRank, and they actually mentioned it in their patent for Google. So this guy's pretty smart. He runs the largest company when it comes to AI, I reckon, probably the main contender for getting us to AGI in that region. So lifearchitect.ai/AGI has this little graphic. Where will AGI be born? I reckon Baidu's way up there, really fast. Zhipu, Tsinghua, actually not that big now. That was a big thing last year. They were doing a lot of research out of that university. I'm not sure where those guys are now. Let's see where they are. O1 has come from the back with some new models. Alibaba's not really particularly impressive. Tencent, ByteDance still in the running there. We'll see what happens tomorrow. It'll be just a really casual sit down. Kite's asking about the diminishing returns on AI and LLMs that have been rumored or leaked through OpenAI and another major AI lab. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. My estimates for GPT-5, you can read more about those at what's in my GPT-5, where I even give an estimate on the parameter count for the GPT-5 model. Spoiler alert, it's huge, maybe 5x of our current frontier models for dense, and then easily 10x for MOE. Alex is loving Grok. I'm thinking that Grok might become a leader very soon with their 100,000 plus H100s, with their ability to push that out to 200,000 or 300,000, which is a major percentage of H100s in the world. I think it was something like 500,000 last year. They were aiming for 2 million this year for NVIDIA to manufacture. I don't think they got there. So there's only maybe 5 companies that have taken the entire distribution of H100s. Mr. Schrom asking about the ChatGPT interface. If we set hyperparameters like temp, top p, does it send those on? No, it doesn't. You'd have to use the API directly to do that. Otherwise, it will just confabulate that it's doing it. At one stage, there was an underlying mechanism for us to adjust that in the chat interface. I'm not sure where I saw that. Did I see that in ChatGPT at some stage? Maybe I saw that in personalized ChatGPTs where I could adjust. I've still got this in here. Probably not great. In any case, I thought I saw a mechanism to adjust the temp P and the top P and temperature within the ChatGPT interface. I don't think that's the case, though. I think you need to use the API. I might be confusing it with another. Oh, I know what I'm thinking of. It's actually inside of po.com. So if you're creating your own, what do they even call these things here? If you're creating your own bot, and this is a third way that we could do our tender responses, actually. Under advanced, we can set a custom temperature in Po's version of the ChatGPT interface because they have API access. But you can't just, in the ChatGPT interface, you can't just tell it to use temp 1. It'll fuzz it a little bit. It knows what temperature equals 1.0 means, and so it will use language to help it get there. But it's not rigorous. TechDNA, I've heard the same rumour. OpenAI may release Sora in the next 2 weeks. Let's see. We're certainly after election season, so they don't have as much risk, reputation risk, as they would have pre-election. Alex, best free option for software for an indie developer creating with AI. It depends what you want to do. I show these interfaces like Claude.ai and chat.com for ChatGPT. I use po.com daily. If you're an indie developer, you probably want to get your hands a bit dirtier, and you can use just terminal Python directly to play around with the raw models. I do use Jan quite a bit. I know a lot of people use Ollama, and Ollama is has just been updated. But Jan and Ollama, and there's another couple, allow you to run models on your device that is appropriate for your level of RAM. This machine, I think I've still only got 18 gig of RAM. I'll push that up to 48 gig today. We were talking in the roundtable about some of our members having 128 gig of RAM on the latest M4s and M3s, and that allows you to do some cooler things with some larger models, 70B non-quantized models. It doesn't allow you to get to Llama 3.1405B just yet, one of the largest open source frontier models. That thing requires hundreds of gig of RAM. So you either need to split that amongst CPUs, or I don't even know what you could do. Solder your own RAM into your MacBook. Won't be recommending that. This is a look at Jan, Jan on Mac. I believe this is also available for Windows. I'd be using Phi here. I can't actually see it right now. Oh, here we go. Phi instruct. Write me a poem about... Who asked this question? Alex. This is running locally on my machine, or trying to run locally on my machine. I've either not downloaded the model or the whole thing wants to crash, but it'll give us a direct response from an LLM that's on our machine if we've got the appropriate RAM and if we've installed it properly, which it looks like I haven't. Love live streams. Cool, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. I will see you, if you'd like, in about 24 hours from now, just over 24 hours, not 48 hours as I said previously. It'll be the same time-ish tomorrow, plus 3 or 4 hours. We'll be sitting back, relaxing, having a cup of peppermint tea, seeing what Robin talks about with their Baidu World 2024 launch of platforms. The memo coming up is going to have some exclusive stuff that I've been really interested in lately. You might have seen the one author MIT paper that was looking at new inventions and discoveries using LLMs and finding the hard problem that we flagged maybe a year ago, that no one is smart enough to understand what AI is giving us now, particularly generative AI. When it provides, maybe it's a new discovery that is a concept or even a tool, I don't think we have brains that are smart enough to be able to say, well, that one is a good answer versus that one is a bad answer, or that one's impossible versus that one is groundbreaking and will change life on Earth as we know it. It's a really interesting problem to have. We're going to see more of it as it discovers new things for us, but it's a really interesting paper to read. I would be recommending that. Let me see if I can find that to post in our chat today. I have the document directly. Maybe I can crack this open. It's called Artificial Intelligence, Scientific Discovery, and Product Innovation, from a few days ago. I'm still using ChatGPT search, which is not going to be that useful for us here. Let's use Google. Throw this link in the chat for those that are interested in reading that one. We won't go through that today, but if you'd like to get some background, that's one of maybe the top 5 things I've got to talk about in the memo. You might have also seen Kling outperforming any other text-to-video model. Got a lot to say about what's possible now with our political environment, our governance environment. It's a really interesting time to be alive. I still open keynotes with every morning feels like Christmas morning, because it does. I'll see you guys possibly tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll see you same time next week for more good times. Thanks for joining.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids, AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. lifearchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.